Around 4000 BCE, the Alluvial Plain of southern Mesopotamia, the land stretching between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, was a sun-drenched, unforgiving expanse. The geography presented early human settlers with a harsh paradox. The rivers provided a massive volume of water, and the soil was exceptionally fertile, yet the region completely lacked the physical building blocks of early civilization. There was no stone. Traditional masonry, the foundation of permanent shelters in other parts of the world, was impossible here. There was no timber. The landscape offered no large trees to harvest, eliminating the possibility of heavy roofing, scaffolding, or load-bearing structural supports. There were no metal ores. Tool development was entirely constrained to what could be fashioned from wet clay and local organics. These severe material deficits meant that small, decentralized agricultural villages could only grow so large before they hit a hard environmental ceiling. The landscape forced early humans into a binary choice: engineer the environment through massive communal organization, or perish. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers were prone to violent, unpredictable flooding. Harnessing that water for reliable agriculture required extensive, heavily engineered irrigation networks. Building these massive networks meant moving millions of tons of dry, packed earth entirely by exhaustive manual labor. Without metal tools to break the ground, or large beasts of burden suited for this specific type of mass excavation, human muscle was the only available power source. Coordinating tens of thousands of workers in a single area creates a critical logistical bottleneck. Brute force alone cannot dig a functional canal system. It requires complex administrative oversight. This massive static labor pool had to be continuously fed and housed. Because they were digging trenches instead of farming, they produced no immediate food of their own. Operationally, these laborers had to be directed synchronously. A miscalculation in trench depth or flow direction could cause canal walls to collapse or flood adjacent fields. The logistical requirement of managing water at this massive scale birthed the centralized state out of sheer environmental necessity. To manage this workforce, the ruling elite had to shift their focus from the macro landscape to the micro level of administrative control, the rigorous standardization of food. They engineered the Bevel-Rimmed Bowl as the world's first mass-produced industrial unit. Its function was strictly utilitarian. It served as a physical algorithm designed exclusively for centralized caloric distribution. It held a precise, standardized daily ration of grain or beer used to pay the state's corvée laborers, citizens conscripted by the state for public works projects. This volumetric diagram illustrates the exact grain-to-energy conversion calculation. The bowl's capacity provided the baseline caloric metric required to keep a human laborer alive and working for exactly 1 day. Paying workers strictly in these fixed caloric units eliminated the chaotic, unpredictable variables of localized barter systems. This predictability allowed the temple elite to accurately forecast state grain reserves against massive labor demands months in advance. By standardizing and controlling exact caloric intake, the rulers quantified human energy into a measurable, manageable resource. The archaeological footprint of the Bevel-Rimmed Bowl is staggering. They are found by the millions across ancient Mesopotamia. Their crude, mold-made construction allowed regional manufacturing centers to churn them out at industrial speeds. Their historical usage compares directly to modern disposable aluminum takeout containers. Archaeological evidence shows these bowls were frequently discarded immediately after a single use, left in massive piles near work sites. Standardizing the container inherently standardized the worker holding it. This created the concept of fungible labor. Under this system, workers were no longer treated as individuals with distinct needs, but as interchangeable, disposable units of energy. By engineering a flawless algorithm for mass payment, Uruk bypassed normal human scaling limits, expanding its workforce indefinitely. The core logic of the standardized bowl scaled up directly into the towering macro architecture of the city itself. The Eanna district, dedicated to the goddess Eanna, served as the centralized processing core of the city. The Mask of Warka provides a physical representation of the deity placed at the top of this hierarchy. The district was defined by its imposing physical construction, built entirely from massive mud brick walls and wide, heavy columns. To protect and decorate these surfaces, builders embedded thousands of painted, baked clay cones directly into the mud brick, forming durable, weather-resistant mosaics. The entire district was heavily secured, ringed by a massive wall that isolated it completely from the surrounding urban sprawl. This internal wall served a strictly practical purpose, restricting access to the state's economic treasury and central grain silos. The Eanna temple functioned as the heavily guarded administrative headquarters of a massive corporation. Inside these dim, highly organized temple storehouses, around 3200 BCE, administrators developed proto-cuneiform. The earliest archaeological records of written language do not contain poetry, mythology, or history. These initial documents were administrative tools, created by state accountants to track grain silos, sheep herds, and the allocation of human labor. By pressing reeds into clay, priests created standardized pictographs. On this tablet, we can isolate the specific markings tracking barley distribution. These organized columns of data allowed the state to process and recall information far beyond human memory. Alongside the data, they introduced the cylinder seal. This was the invention of the bureaucratic signature. When rolled across wet clay, the seal secured property, enforced strict administrative hierarchy, and made state transactions tamper-proof. If the mud brick architecture was the hardware of Uruk, proto-cuneiform and cylinder seals were the software required to run it without crashing. At its peak, Uruk successfully sustained the densest concentration of human life the planet had ever seen. This density required absolute systemic control built entirely on mud, grain, and data. Uruk operated as a brutal, highly engineered machine that successfully wrote the logistical blueprint for the modern state.